Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous female left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of August 18th, 2023, a date of marriage of 2000. She has a clinging boomerang who is a high-energy replayer. She says, I believe I had a midlife crisis myself starting 2 years ago. I started a new job and became limerent with a coworker. I told my husband that I wanted a divorce. He became depressed, or he was already so in hindsight. This coworker was a narcissist who used and hurt me. At times I realized, but would then quickly be taken over by the mist. When my husband found out, he screamed at me how dangerous this man was, which was true. And this made me instantly wake up. I literally saw the mist pulling up. My husband said he hadn't recognized me for months. He would look after me so I could recover, he said, but there was no chance of reconciliation now. We grew closer again, and I was overwhelmed with regret and secret hope. Early spring, however, he gave up his business of 10 years and started a new career working on a farm. This is where he met the alienator. At bomb drop, he left secretly in the night. What do I do? We have 2 kids. He's not supporting us financially. He sees the kids 3 times per week. Does this sound like MLC in both of us? It is not uncommon that the midlife crisis of one spouse brings on the other. Given that, however, I can't tell you that it is an MLC in him, because it could just simply be, you know what? I gave up. I didn't want it anymore. She did this. She betrayed me. She disappointed me. I can't trust her. And that meant my marriage was over. So that's it. Even though you were getting closer. And then he met somebody, and he had put himself to be open to meeting somebody. I can't tell you that it is that or not. So please don't read into it that I'm saying it's not a midlife crisis. This is the information there. Here's the information that I would say would be, okay, this guy's abandoned, which I would put toward the crisis. He's not supporting you. And I mean you as in the children. You plural, the family. He sees them, the not supporting, and that he snuck away in the middle of the night. Except that in early spring, he gave up the business, started a new career. That's where he met the alienator. So did you know about this alienator beforehand? And what did you know? In other words, she existed. There was a person at the work site? Or did you find out all about this after he left at bomb drop? Because he secretly left in the night, but was this ramping up? Did you feel an energy? Because you say bomb drop was when he left. Had there been conversations right before that? I mean, he did give up his business, start a new career, working on a farm. So I can't tell you, but the leaving secretly is kind of a clue to me, and the not supporting you. But how is he treating you? You say he's a clinging boomerang, but he left secretly, and that those can go together. But in other words, there's contact, and he does see the kids regularly. So yeah, it could be a midlife crisis. Where are you in your journey? You said that you instantly woke up. So what kind of healing are you doing? What kind of amends are you doing as well to make sure that you really are through, that you have built in the coping skills that you did not have when you met your limerent object, when you met that alienator, and that he was abusive and he hurt you? What are you doing so that it doesn't happen again, so that you're not still susceptible now, or that maybe when things are better, and they're not right now given your marriage, but that if you're emotionally regulated now, what happens when something happens that kicks you out of your emotional regulation and you go into negative coping skills that you're not susceptible? What we want to do is, even when we are getting kicked around by whatever life's throwing at us, we are emotionally regulated enough. We have enough of the coping skills that we are not as susceptible, that we can handle it and not fall into these midlife crisis patterns, being subject to, say, an alienator. Because if your husband were coming to me right now, forget his part of it, but said, my wife woke up, She saw the mist rise. We're getting closer, but I'm really worried about this, and I'm really scared. I'm scared to trust again. Here's what I would tell him regarding you. I would say, okay, 2 years ago, she started her midlife crisis with this new job. There was the bomb drop. It's been 2 years. I would say that is not long enough. Excuse me. Now, that doesn't mean there are outliers, okay? So, and the fact that you're here asking me about it is something, because there's an awareness within you. But so I don't want you to take that and mean that you're not, that you're going to have another crisis or anything like that. But I also want you to continue this awareness, and this is what that is. 2 years, I don't see that very often. Midlife crisis is 3 to upwards of 7 years. Some people say women can take less time than men. But look, I just gave you a giant range. 3 to, not 7, but upwards of. Okay. So just in the average men, maybe women will be a little less than the men in that, but still within that range. 2 years, yeah, I do start to see the turnaround at 2 years of those who are going to be, if somebody was an early returner, not premature, but early. In other words, somebody who came home around the 3-year mark. I might see some things at 2 years that were indicative that was happening. So it's not so unheard of that I see changes and a bit of a turnaround, even though they're not through the crisis at 2 years. But here's what I say. When I see an MLC that, oh, it's done at 2 years. And you might be describing that it was actually earlier than this, since you say 2 years ago, but your mist sounds like came up, lifted 6 to 9 months ago, given your bomb drop. If someone gets yanked out, the front of the tunnel, in other words, they haven't gone all the way through the tunnel, they haven't gone through and filled in their developmental gaps with the coping skills. The gaps that you had from trauma in childhood or from whatever childhood experiences that didn't give you the proper training, that didn't teach you how to handle these pieces of life. Or you know how to handle them when things are going fine, but when there's a challenge, you fall into negatives because you don't know what to do then. You become emotionally dysregulated and you don't have the skills to get yourself out and to solve these problems. And you go into your crisis and you're yanked out the front so you don't finish that, you will go back into it. And I usually am telling the left behind spouse, your MLCer will go back into another crisis later, at a later date. And by later, I don't mean in 2 months. I would call that the same crisis. I don't mean in 2 years. I'd probably still call that the same crisis. I mean in 10 years. Out in the future, they will go into it. I will call it a new crisis. I will call it a separate one. Because if it was 2 years, I'd say, well, there was a little bit of a lull, but this is the arc of the same one. And they will have a worse crisis. It will be worse. For one thing, you've built up more stuff in those 10 years that hadn't gotten resolved. So there's more stuff, more gaps to fill in your development. There's more stuff in that bag of sins you carry around, or things that aren't sins, but the shadow. So you need to do your shadow work. And what I'm telling you now is I want you to do what you can. Get into therapy. Do what you can to do your shadow work now so that you are healthy. You are able, if you choose to stand for your marriage. We can't guarantee that he will then choose to come home to you or not. But you can heal. You can do your amends. He doesn't have to accept forgiveness. You can still wrap that gift. He has to choose to open the gift of forgiveness, but you do your part in giving that. This is offered to me, by me to you freely. I am giving you my forgiveness. If you don't want to accept it, you can continue to escape and avoid from that. But you do your part. And you detach. You learn, then you become the stable stander. And you detach, and you've done your healing, and you accept the process of his crisis and what he has to go through. And now you get to be an example to him. Not just of a stander, but you get to be the example of, I made my mistakes. I came through it. And I recognized the mistakes and the sins. And I feel poorly for what I've done, but I am making my amends. And one of the repairs is that I want to repair my relationships rather than just see that they were ever destroyed and not do anything to repair, to make amends, to sew them back together. And I want the amends. My goal personally is for those amends to get all the way to a reconciliation. It may not happen, but you accept the process of his journey, and then it might not. And as you come through, maybe you'll find out more as time goes by if this is a midlife crisis. And whether it is or not, let's say it's not a midlife crisis and it's just, she cheated on me, emotionally even. And she put us in danger because that guy was dangerous and abusive. And I can't believe she did that. That wasn't the wife I knew. I can't do this anymore. I can't trust her. I can't be with someone. That's my line in the sand. They can say all that. That's no crisis. Logical person who's, the abandoning of the family. Okay, but it still doesn't mean it has to be over. You, while he's out on his supposed possible crisis, you still are going to prove yourself. Not because you're trying to win somebody and it's a victory. You prove yourself because that's what you need to do for you. That you have healed, you are healing, you have insight to understand and take account for what you've done and then make amends for it. That's what you do. You give that gift to the world. It's his choice, what he does with it. Okay. I hope this is helpful, and I will see everybody in the next question.